In this video, we'll take a look at how to create reading assignments. This type of assignment allows you to create homework, quizzes, and exams centered around reading comprehension very quickly and effortlessly. Let's take a look at how it works. So first, let's enter the title for the assignment. Then we can choose how many passages we want the reading to be. So you can either have a single passage reading or you can do multiple passages. Let's do 3 passages for this reading. Then for each passage, we can enter in the topic or theme of the passage. So this one I want it to be about Bad Bunny, as well as a passage type. And then for the description here, you can generate it with AI. And this is a description about the passage that will be given to the AI when to create the passage. You can also choose the length of the passage, as well as the difficulty, and as usual, vocabulary and grammar to include. So now we need to do this for each passage. So let's go to the second passage, which I'm going to do about nature. I'm going to make it an informal blog. And then you also have the option to add in a description here and then enhance it with AI. If you already have some idea of what you want it to be about, but you want it to be more fleshed out. So then here, let's make this a little bit shorter, a little bit easier. And then for the last passage, I'm going to do human ingenuity. I'm going to make this a poem about space exploration. Okay, let me make this short. Let me make this a little bit higher difficulty. As usual, we have secure testing mode here and Catalina reading assistant, which I will take a look at later in this video. Let's create the assignment. So now that the reading is generated, there's a few different things we can do here. One thing we can do is enhance the reading. So for example, you can say something like, make text difficulty a little easier. So you want to make it a little bit easier if you think it's a little too advanced for your students. And then now you see here, it's been made a little bit easier. We can also do something like add a paragraph about his childhood. And then now you see here, there's a paragraph about his childhood. You can also select specific parts of the passage to enhance just that part. For example, we can select this part here and say, and then we see here a little bit more details about his neighborhood. We can also change parts of the text like this. Use different album. Or even change some vocabulary. There we go. And we can also edit the text of the article manually if we'd want to do that, for example. And also bold or format words if you would like that. So now let's go ahead and generate the other 2 articles. Now that we have all the passages generated, let's generate the questions. So there's 9 different types of questions you can choose from: multiple choice, free response, matching, multi-select, fill in the blank, ordering, short answer, true, false, or sorting. You can choose how many of each type of question you want, or you can let AI decide the question types, which it'll just choose whichever are the best options that match with this passage. You can also add special instructions, like, for example, like make questions a little easier, and then click generate. So now that the questions have generated, let's take a look at them. So we see here the multiple choice, where you just choose one correct answer. Multi-select can be multiple different answers. Multi-select again. Free response here, which is just a free response, and there's some guidance here on how this should be graded. So free response and short answer questions are graded by the AI. You don't have to manually grade them yourself, but you can choose how much partial credit to award. So this is just either just half or full, in thirds, in fourths, or no partial credit, so all or nothing. So if you want to edit anything in these questions, you can just click this edit button, change the question or change the guidance, change the point weightage. That's all available to you. And then here's a matching question, which is just where you match the answers to the questions themselves. So now we can use this add enhanced questions feature here to alter the questions in certain ways rather than manually adding these questions or changing these questions ourselves. So for example, we can say add one fill in the, and we can see here the fill in the blank and the true or false question has been added. We can also do something like make all questions more focused on on key vocabulary words. That way we can apply broad changes to all or many of the questions. And we see here they're all about vocabulary. So moving on to the second passage here, I generated some questions for this. So here's what the short answer looks like. The main difference between short answer and free response is short answer is typically like one sentence, and there's an expected answer for what the answer should be. Whereas free response is just guidance on how to grade the student answer. So there can be more variety in responses. And then this is sorting, so where students drag and drop these different ideas or phrases from the text into different categories. Ordering is just um, determining the chronological order of certain ideas in the text. And then something else you can do here is you can add your own question across all these different types here and add in the details for it. If you want to add your own um, idea, if you have some your own ideas for questions. So one thing that IB typically does, for example, like the IB program, they have true or false questions, but then they also have a step where you have to justify which one you chose. So you can actually do that here if you get creative by doing a free response question saying, then you can just incorporate this why correct statement into the response guidance saying student. And then we can add the question here. Additionally, if you want to change the order of a question, you can just drag and drop it in the correct spot. And you can also, if you want to add a question in between, you can just add it right over here. So when you're done with all your passages and questions, you can hit save and publish. And then that takes you to the assignment details page where you can see all the readings and all the questions. You can also expand them to see them full screen. And if you need to change anything, you can just click open in Reading Builder, which will take you back to the page we just came from. So now that we have the assignment ready, let's take a look at it from the student's perspective. So as a student, let me start the assignment. So as a student here, I have access to a lot of different features I can do to help me comprehend the text. So I can highlight over sentences and I can add my own highlights. And then as usual, I can see a translation or add it to my vocab list. And then I can also add my own notes while I read. Over on the questions side here, I can answer the questions. And I also have a few things I can do here. I can do strike through mode to remove distractor answers to help me um, figure out the questions. I can also bookmark it to save it for review later if I'm stuck. So for free response and short answer questions, I can just type in my response here. For matching questions, it's just a drop down. For fill in the blank, you just fill in the blank. True or false, you just click like that. Let's move to the next passage. So for sorting, you just drag and drop the answer blocks into these categories. For ordering, you just drag into the correct order. Now that I've answered all the questions, let me submit the reading. On this page here, I can see how I scored, and I can see for each question whether I got it right, wrong, or I got partial credit, and I can see an explanation for the answer. I can also view the evidence in the passage to see which specific part of the passage um, shows evidence for that. There. For for free response questions and short answer questions, I can see my response as well as feedback for the grading in terms of why I got or didn't get points for that question or got partial credit. And as usual, I can see skill points earned, strengths, and improvements for this assignment. So back on the teacher's end, on the Performance Insight tab, we can see some details about the class performance, such as how many students have submitted it, the average score, the high score, the low score, and then the most missed question. And then over here in the questions, we can see exactly what percentage of students chose each answer. For free response and short answer questions, we can see a class analysis, which is just the AI looking at all the students' answers and seeing overall what are the trends it notices and how students performed with this question. And as usual, we can generate insights for this assignment across all submissions, which will generate some global strengths and focus areas across all students. One thing to note here is that it's very difficult for students to cheat. Copy and paste is disabled, so they cannot copy and paste the text or outside sources. And also, if the student tries to open their in-browser AI assistant, that's detected. Now let's take a look at how secure testing mode works for reading assignments. So now if we start the assignment, we see that the browser is in secure testing mode, so any tab switches or emergency quits will be recorded and displayed for the teacher. You can look at previous videos for more information about this. Now let's take a look at the Quetzalita reading assistant. This is an AI reading assistant that will help the student understand the passage and approach answering questions without giving them the answer, just guiding them the right direction. So let's start the assignment now. And now we see here with Quetzalita reading assistant enabled, there's this Ask Quetzalita button. What this will do is this will pull out a chat here where we can ask Quetzalita questions like, help me understand this passage. And so it helps you understand the passage not by just like flat out telling you what it's saying, but asking you questions like, what are your thoughts? How do you think about what do you think about approaching this? Like, which section do you need more help with to help guide the student in the right path? I can also ask, can you help me with let's go to a different passage with question 11. And then again, it just guides you with how to approach this question without actually giving you the answer. This is great for practices and homeworks where you're giving students more challenging passages or questions to help them really understand what the passages and the questions are saying to help them learn and grow. So as you can see, this is a really powerful tool that allows you to create reading comprehension assignments from everything from homeworks to quizzes to exams to help your students improve their reading comprehension skills and grow as students. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you.